which is incredibly important. And I really, really want you to pay attention to this content today, because this is where oftentimes the biggest headaches in receiving benefits and working comes up for folks. And there are two fantastic documents that the folks at UWIPS have created that I want you to download today to make sure that you have those as resources in front of you. And Jolene will help talk about those as well. And the last part is the application. So now that you have participated in this webinar series, what are you going to do with the information, and ethically what you should do with the information as well, and how you connect with the folks at UWIPS, which is really, really, really important. We've been talking a lot about connecting with your local experts throughout this series, and so it's going to be important that you connect with those folks. And again, know that by attending the webinar series, you are not an expert. You just have a little bit more information to talk about benefits and work. And again, I want you to know that one, work and benefits go together. Folks, 98% of the time are always going to make more money. I want you to remember that the house, right, analogy or diagram, that SSA is the house, and there are two very, very different benefits, and they live in separate rooms, and they come with separate rules. Okay, so we'll talk about the application here shortly. And next slide. Oh, you can keep going. One more. So we're going to talk about verifying benefits. So again, I'm just going to breeze over this because I want you to know it exists. But the BPQY is a snapshot that confirms, or this is the document that Social Security Administration houses that says this is when this person became entitled to benefits, this is what they receive, this is what the folks at UWIPS are basing their information off of. And so this document really confirms what folks receive, because sometimes they don't know, right? Or they're unsure how many trial work periods they've used. So again, it's called the BPQY, or the Benefits Planning Query and Analysis. And what this document includes is what benefits they receive, if they're on Medicare or Medicaid in some situations, any scheduled medical reviews, a payee, their last work review date. So again, this is not something that you need to request. It's not something you need to be able to know how to read. I just want you to know it exists. Okay, next slide, please. So if for some reason someone would like to, a beneficiary can request their own BPQY. And I'll let Jolene talk more about how, if she wants to share how they request it. But it may make their jobs easier if you help the beneficiary request their own BPQY and then take that to the folks at UWIPS. So this is how folks can request it. They can call a 1-800 number. Another option is that the WIPA services know how to pull and request that information. Next slide. So there are releases, like there are releases in everything that we do, right? We're working with protected health information. And so in order for any entity to request the BPQY, they have to complete two authorizations. One is a general one that explains why the information is needed, their consent to disclose Social Security information, and then the other one is for IRS. And next slide. So this is an example. If you look in the Red Book, this is an example of a BPQY. So again, the intent is not to feel like you have to request this document. I just want you to know that it exists, and this is what certified benefits planners are going to use before they even provide information to somebody, because they have to make sure that the information they're providing is accurate. And everything in benefits planning is individualized. Everything in our employment work is individualized, right? So just know that the BPQI is a really helpful document and that folks who are providing certified benefits planning would be requesting this document. Next slide. All right. This is where you got to pay attention, folks. So reporting earnings. And let me tell you my biggest mistake on the job. As a very young job developer who had just started doing job development, I was working with this gentleman who he was a Title II beneficiary. And so remember way back to our Title II webinars, off of his own work record, and he had been working for years prior to receiving my support as a job developer. So he had gone through all of his work incentives. He was outside of his extended period of eligibility. Remember what that is, right? And he immediately started working at SGA. So he terminated his benefit immediately. And I think I talked about this scenario maybe in webinar 2, but I had no idea wrong story. But anyway, you also need to help report. He reported and then terminated his benefits. Second biggest mistake Ashley made was helping a gentleman who received SSI, and he was working at nearly full time, and he called my CEO like 3-4 months later after he had gotten this great job. And he said, SSA says I owe all this money, and I had no idea I was supposed to report my income. And I had no idea he was supposed to report his income. And so the issue was that because I didn't know how benefits worked, I didn't even have the very basic information that you're all receiving today. So I supported him to get a job, but I had no idea that he also needed to report those earnings. And so I caused him a lot of headaches because of my lack of information. So if the only thing that you take away from this series today is knowing and helping educate folks that they need to report their earnings, that's a win. And I'm going to have Jolene help share some information, and she has some fantastic documents that I want to make sure you get printed out at the end of today. So the biggest piece is that you absolutely cannot assume that people know how, when, or why to report. You just can't make the assumption, okay? Next slide. So we talked about all the way back in our first webinar that beneficiaries are oftentimes confused with the rules, right? And with that, they're unsure of what should be reported and when, right? So even if the very basic information is part of your conversation, you're talking about, you just got a job, hooray, amazing. Remember, you also have a responsibility to let Social Security Administration know that you are working as well. And if they fail to report, they will absolutely have an overpayment. So again, failure to report causes more benefit problems than any other single issue. And I'm sure that Jolene and her team can elaborate on that as well. Next one. So I'm just going to breeze through these slides, and then I'm going to turn it over to Jolene to add information about reporting, and then we'll talk about how you're going to apply the information, and then we'll open it up to Jolene and her team, and then we can go over questions. So when this is for Title II specifically, so I want you to open the door to Title II. When do you report? One, when you're obtaining a job. So that means when SSA has a decision to make as well. So when it starts, when it stops, and when you have a wage increase. If someone has the completion of their trial work period, if they're at substantial gainful activity, and if there's any need to suspend or reinstate their payments during their extended period of eligibility. Next slide. So when it comes to reporting, and again, Jolene has some fantastic forms that I want you to print out and just keep those handy. But folks are required to report any new activity to SSA. So again, when SSA would need to make a decision if they're using one of those trial work periods, if they're at FGA, you want to make sure that they're making that report that I got a job and if anything changes. And you can call the 1-800 number and make a work report. You could go to the local office and also report that. Always, always, always ask for a receipt. And SSA will conduct a work activity review if trial work periods will be used or work activity is expected to be over substantial gainful activity. So again, if reporting specifically for Title II, if earnings are expected to cause the use of that trial work period month or they're at FGA, SSA is going to send a report or a form called the work activity report, and they're asking for information about the individual working. So they're going to ask questions about monthly earnings, where are they working? They're trying to sift out, how much folks are working. Are they going to use trial work period? Are they going to be around FGA? And then SSA will send them a letter kind of summarizing the results of that. Next. All right, so now close the door to Title II, open the door to SSI and reporting. So when it comes to SSI, everything really needs to be reported because remember, it's a needs-based benefit and any other money I have coming in, SSA needs to know about it. So not just wages have to be reported. If I have any additional money coming in, SSA wants to know about it. Any changes in my income have to be reported. So if somebody starts paying for my rent, again, remember they may have their payments reduced. Any changes at all, any other money coming in, we have to let SSA know. And oftentimes SSA will prefer monthly wage estimates because it can be confusing if they're trying to adjust it every single month. So they may ask for estimates and then settle up at the end of the year. But that can be different in various states, so I'll let Jolene elaborate on that if she'd like to in just a few minutes. Next slide. So SSA evaluates eligibility and cash benefits each month. So again, they're going to be looking at, so sorry, the echo is difficult, but so they have to report their earnings to SSA by the 10th of the following month. So I want you to remember that when someone's reporting, they need to get it in as quickly as possible. And absolutely, deadline is by the 10th. Jolene and her team have a great recommendation to get that in a little bit earlier by the 6th. So it's really, really important, and for the app you have to. And remember that earnings in January are going to be determined, really, those earnings will be applied to their March check. So they run a few months behind. So again, it's really, really critical that folks are reporting and letting folks know when they're working, whatever additional income they have coming in, they've got to let SSA know because it will affect that number in their SSI check. Next slide. So ways to report monthly gross earnings. So you could take it to the SSA office, you can fax it, you can mail it, but you want to put attention to SSI. You can also use the phone or the smartphone app. That has to be in by the 6th of the month. And you can also click on this link and it'll walk you through reporting as well. But I pulled this from Jolene and her team, but they always recommend to complete it within the first 6 days of the month because, again, it has to be received by the 10th. So next slide. All right, and this is where I'm going to turn it over to Jolene. If you want to unmute and add anything around reporting would be fantastic, and then also go over your helpful tips. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Ashley. So this is Jolene Weiler, and I'm the director of the Utah Work Incentive Planning Services. And I have with me Margot Dana, and she is a benefit specialist and our trainer with Utah Work Incentive Planning Services. And again, if you can download, there's 3 documents here that we have, 2 of which we have created, which are the Utah Reporting to SSI PDF and the Utah Reporting to SSDI PDF. And then Social Security created the SSI Mobile Wage Reporting and Telephone Wage Reporting paperwork. And so a lot of what most of what Ashley said is absolutely correct. You do need to report to Social Security. For SSDI, you need to report when you start or stop working, or if you've already told them about your work, but if your duties have changed. So if you are starting to use work incentives, or if your earnings are going over the trial work amount, or if you stop using trial work months, you want to make sure Social Security knows if you stop using trial work amounts. But the way you report, there are some additional ways to report. And one of them is one that Social Security really has been pushing, and that is the My Social Security account. And hopefully you've heard a little bit about it. Social Security, again, has been pushing it a lot. And to do it, you go to the MySS, or go to www.ssa.gov, and they have a link to it right on that front page to create a MySSA account. And it works even for people who aren't on disability benefits. You can look at your Social Security earnings and what you'd be getting if you went on disability now, or what your retirement benefits are estimated to be. But if you're on disability benefits, you can report your earnings. If you're on SSDI, also if you're on SSI benefits. And on these 2 papers that we've created with UWIPs, we have some instructions and some helpful hints on reporting your wages online, because there are some caveats to it where if you're self-employed, you can't report. It's not very friendly to report online if you're on SSDI on the MySSA app, or the MySSA account. But we've also added all of the Social Security office locations on here. So you have all of the Utah Social Security office locations on here. We also recommend that you actually go to your local office. We haven't had as much success going through the 1-800 number. We have more success when we go through the local offices than when we go through the 1-800 number. And then going back to that last document that we're asking you to download, the SSI Mobile Wage Reporting and Telephone Wage Reporting. So SSI has a mobile wage reporting app that people can download on their smartphone or on a tablet, where they can enter their wage information during the first 6 days of the month for their previous month, and report it through their smartphone. And that's a really good way for people to be able to report their wages, because it's something that a lot of people already have their smartphones, so it's an easy, accessible way for them to do that. You're probably noticing that Social Security is kind of trying to push people to not work with a real person at Social Security. They're trying to have people work with technology. Now, part of the reason why is those Social Security claims representatives are really, really busy. And so, yes, you can still fax and mail and bring in your wage reporting, but if an actual claims representative has to touch it and process it, it's going to take longer. So if you can report it through the MySSA account, or if you can do the telephone or the mobile wage reporting system, it's generally going to be faster. Do you have anything to add on that, Margot?
Yeah, just basically when you are using the app or the online reporting, that's you doing the data entry for them. So you don't have to wait for anyone there to have time to enter it. So it can reduce overpayments.
On the helpful tips on the slide, yeah, always send Social Security copies of your documents. Don't send the originals because the client is never going to get those back. Always put name and Social Security number on every page. That means if a client is sending in check stubs, even if they're sending in 100 check stubs, it's a pain in the butt, but they have to put their Social Security number on them because an employer is only going to put the last 4 digits of the Social Security number on that check stub. So they have to put their whole Social Security number because Social Security may have a lot of Rob Smiths, and they're not going to go through if one of those pay stubs gets out of order and gets lost on a person's desk, they're not going to look up all their Rob Smiths. So make sure and put the Social Security number on every single page you give to Social Security. And very important, and especially if you're dealing with an overpayment, you've got to keep a log of the person's name that you speak with at Social Security and when you spoke with them. Because Social Security will ask that. If you have an overpayment, they're going to say, well, when did you call? And who'd you talk to? And if you say, oh, I don't know, it was a couple months ago, then they're going to say, well, I guess you didn't really call us because you don't know who you talked to and you don't know when you called. And we have run into that more times than you would imagine. So, see, with the app, so there's a question with the app or website, would that be taking a picture of your pay stub, then typing in the wage information? No, it is not. It's not taking a picture. What it is it's typing in the wage information, and then I think what happens later is Social Security will confirm that wage information with the employer to make sure it is correct. So you don't take a picture, you just type in the wage information. So the client will need to know the pay period dates and the pay. So they'll need to know what the pay periods are and the pay date, and they'll need to know the gross pay. But again, that's on the it's on the instruction sheet. But no, they don't have to take a picture.
Yeah, basically it's pretty simple. They don't save anything on there. It is like a really, really, really basic app. You pull it up, they say, tell us who you are. And just FYI, if someone has an individual payee, when they say tell us who you are, they mean the payee. They don't mean the beneficiary, the person getting the money. So I've had a lot of people just put in the person who's getting the benefit, and then all of a sudden they're saying it's not working, but really it's because they needed to put their own information in first. And the app is super easy. Like you say, yes, here's my basic information, whether you're the person or the payee. Then it's a little bit later, like, are you putting this in for yourself or someone else? If it's for someone else, because you're the individual payee, you say someone else, then you enter in their social, and then you enter in their total gross wages for the month before, hit submit, and you're done. Like, seriously, it's less than 5 minutes. It's so much more convenient. And for the online thing, I don't have as much experience with that because I can't look at that.
But I know that the online thing, the representative payee can do the reporting for their person that they are the payee for, but they can't view all of necessarily the information for that client, but they can use the app and report income for that person that they're the payee for. So hopefully that answers your question, Joanne.
Online, like you need the federal tax ID number for the employer so that they can connect to their payroll system. The rep payee, the rep payee can use the app, but organizational payees cannot because they're required to report a little bit differently. But individual payees can.
So organizational payees have to do it the same way they've always done it. So Joanne, you'll have to do it the same way you've always done it. So Ashley, you can go ahead and take it back now.
Sounds good. Can everybody still hear me okay?
We're good.
Okay, great. If we could go to the next slide, please. Excellent. All right, so now what? Now that you have all of this information, that you've been participating every week, and you've got a little bit more information under your belt about benefits, what do you do with it? Next slide. All right, so these are just a couple of points. One, we'd like you to feel a little bit more comfortable about bringing up the topic, because we know the reality is that as employment professionals, the conversation is coming up, right? Sometimes we just dodge it because we don't know anything about benefits, right? And we just pass over it. Our hope that by participating in the webinar series, you feel a little bit more comfortable in having a conversation about the very, very basics. So what do I mean by that? That means if you're sitting across the table, or hopefully sitting across someone in their living room, having a conversation about employment, and they say, I am so afraid, or I'm going to lose my benefits if I go to work. And you can say, I understand that that's a fear. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? Can you tell me about what benefits you are receiving? If they're working with VR, VR is going to know what benefits they're receiving, and you can check in with their counselor. You may already be asking that information in your admissions process. But again, just having that conversation and saying, you know, employment and benefits absolutely can go together, and I'd love to help connect you with professionals, UWITs, in understanding more about that, depending upon where they're at in the spectrum. Jolene and her team might not be able to get to them right away, but you at least know how to connect them, right? Or you can share that with SSI, that whole thing about part-time employment, right? Oh, if I work part-time, I'm going to lose my benefits. You can have a conversation with folks and really kind of sift out if they're receiving SSI only. If they say, I only received one check and it's $771 a month, you know that they're receiving SSI, and that part-time idea that they're going to lose their benefits, you know that that's bogus, right? So helping folks have a basic conversation of just knowing that work and benefits can go together and connecting to the professionals. So providing that basic information, connecting with Jolene and her team, and we're going to get you information at the end of today's webinar and how you do that, and checking in with folks. The other piece that we just talked about is reporting, right? So don't make the mistake that Ashley made and not telling the person to not report their income. I didn't tell them not to. I just didn't know it existed, right? I didn't know that that was their responsibility. So that if you're supporting a beneficiary, an individual, to obtain employment and they get a job, one, you celebrate that like crazy, and you help remind them of their responsibilities to report, to check in with Social Security Administration. And so even after, you know, that you tell them that once, we all know that we can hear things one time and only a bit sinks in, right? So checking in with folks again. hey, Joe, did you remember to report your income this month to Social Security Administration? You know, do you need any assistance in that? You know, here's this helpful sheet. Let's walk through it together. And then lastly, absolutely download those documents that Jolene and her team have put together. They are there to help you. They're there to help beneficiaries because having that communication with SSA is essential. They don't have to be scary, but they do absolutely need to know when folks are working and what income they have coming in. So really that's the intent, is just that you feel a little bit more comfortable with this information. Next slide. So basic information and referral, right? So again, the intent is that you could also provide an explanation of the difference between SSI and Title II benefits, and just let the individual know that work incentives exist. You don't have to go into the details of all of them, but just knowing, right? Hopefully you leave knowing that SSA really wants to encourage folks to work, because when folks work, they're less reliant on those benefits, right? They're tax-paying citizens. They also are contributing to our community, right? We all, the same desires that everybody has to contribute. So even just helping beneficiaries know the differences between benefits as those conversations come up is incredibly helpful. Again, explain how to report earnings. That is the biggest thing. It's the biggest headache. Folks have got to report those earnings. And then just understand that benefits education is part of the equation, right? Understanding that benefits and work go together. If you remember way back to webinar 1, we talked about the concept of loss aversion, right? And that the idea of risking the loss of that benefit totally outweighs the potential gain of employment, right? So the reality is the idea of even losing my benefits can keep me from pursuing employment, right? So we have to make it part of the conversation. We have to help folks know that, one, we can connect with the experts, that work and benefits go together, and that there are really cool work incentives in place to really encourage folks as well. As employment providers, I highly, highly encourage you to be collecting data. So when you're supporting folks to go to work, know how many hours folks are working, even if it's a ballpark, right? And help identify if folks are working around trial work level or substantial gainful activity, and if they're beneficiaries, particularly Title II beneficiaries, but you can keep a rolling data collection of this information so that you know if folks are around that SGA level, if they're around trial work level, again, connecting folks to UWIPs to receive support. And then again, this is the last thing, and please, please write this down, put it in your brain, but never offer information unless you're certain that it's accurate. And when in doubt, refer. You have a phenomenal team of experts in your state, and they are there to help, right? So even if you have the conversation and they start talking about benefits and you get really nervous, and just say, you know, I participated in this webinar series and I am positive that employment and benefits can go together. And there's these really fantastic team of professionals that you can connect with called UWIPs. I'd be happy to get you their information. Even if that's all the information you provide, that's a win, right? But we know that there are a bajillion myths out there about benefits and work, and they're keeping folks from working. So we don't want to be part of that, right? So now that you have this information, the ethical piece is that we never want to offer any information unless we're really certain that it's accurate. So when in doubt, refer. Next slide. So when do you refer? One, if you're uncomfortable and you don't know what you're talking about, right? But you know the folks at UWIPs exist. If you're unable to identify the benefit type, right? So that is also an ethical standard, right? If you didn't confirm or know for sure what benefit someone was receiving and you were providing SSA rules to someone who's a Title II beneficiary, that's a huge problem, right? So we've got to, if you're unable to confirm what type of benefit they're receiving, you definitely want to refer. Anything around self-employment or not wage employment, anyone who's considering a work incentive. So if you know that it would be a real benefit for somebody to utilize an IRWI or a subsidy or a PASS, you want to get connected with the folks at UWIPS. If someone has an overpayment, absolutely make sure that folks get referred. Hold on, bear with me for just a second. If they have questions about healthcare coverage, absolutely. Those things get real state specific. Anyone who's married, if they're under 18 and receiving SSI and they're going to be turning 18 soon, if they're unsure of if their trial work period's been used, if you have any doubt of where they're at in that continuum of benefits as a Title II beneficiary. So really the answer is, when in doubt, refer, right? Hopefully Jolene and team are not getting nervous about 100 people listening to this and we're telling them to refer, but you really do have to connect with your experts, and you have a great team of experts in your state. If you are not from Utah and attending this webinar series, I highly, highly encourage you to Google your state name and Work Incentive Planning and Assistance Project, or WIPA, and find out who your local WIPA office is. Okay, next slide. All right, Jolene and team, it's back to you.
Okay, thank you very much. I asked Tricia to upload another file, and that other file is the EM/PABS program PDF. And what that is the local protection and advocacy for beneficiaries of Social Security. And that is run through the Disability Law Center here in Utah. And that program does a number of things for individuals who are who have a disability. They will help if people need employment assistance, sorry, Margot's got to help me with some of this. If they need if they feel like they're being discriminated at work because of their disability, or if they need some accommodations at work because of their disability. What we use them a lot for, though, is if someone has an overpayment because of work, the people at the PABS program can help them with overpayments, but they have to be incurred because of work. That's a very important thing. So that brochure can help your client get a hold of the PABS program. Anything else on PABS? No? Okay, so back to the slide. So Utah Work Incentive Planning Services, we serve individuals statewide, and we serve individuals who are between 14 years old and full retirement age. So everybody's full retirement age is a little bit different, but we don't serve individuals who are on full retirement, and we don't work with people who are on early retirement. We just work with people who are on disability benefits. They have to be receiving Social Security benefits based on their disability and interested in working or currently working and would like to know how work will affect their benefits. Something I didn't put in there is, let me just tell you really quick about the structure of Utah Work Incentive Planning Services. We currently have 5 benefit specialists to cover the entire state. Most of our funding comes from vocational rehabilitation. So our primary customer base are individuals who are receiving vocational rehabilitation services. We do have a small grant from Social Security to serve individuals who are not receiving vocational rehabilitation services. So if somebody's not on VR, then they can be referred into UWIPS. There is a wait, unfortunately, for services, but we can serve them. Tricia, can you go to the next slide? The way you refer somebody is by filling out a referral form, and they're available on our website, which I gave you our website, and you fill out the referral form, And there's a number of ways you can send it in. You can, you can fax it to us, or you can email it to us. Those are the two main ways. Those are the best ways to reach us. If you're really not in a hurry, you can mail it to us, but faxing it and emailing it to us are the best ways. But if you get the referral on the website, it is a fillable PDF, so you can fill it out on the computer, but then you have to print it and send it to us. If someone is receiving vocational rehabilitation services, please have them ask their vocational rehabilitation counselor to refer them to us. We do have a process within VR for referrals, and we prefer that way for vocational rehabilitation services. One more thing from what Ashley said about the benefits planning query. We will request the benefits planning query, so clients don't have to come to us with the BPQY. We will request the benefits planning query. So anything else we need to add?
I find it difficult to get it. Like, a lot of the workers at our local offices don't know how to run that report, so it's a little bit more trickier for them to get it themselves.
I think those are my only 2 slides, Tricia. Do you want to go to the next slide? It is. So we're going to go back to Ashley.
So I don't know if you can see the little graphic, but there's a picture of a ruler, and then there's a picture of a rock. And the ruler is telling the rock, you rock, and the rock is telling the ruler, you rule. I can't see it on my screen. So it's fantastic that so many of you have carved out time to participate in this small benefits planning information series. Again, I just want to thank you for carving out time and making it a priority. 2, I hope that you leave with a little bit more information and a little bit more confidence in knowing the difference of benefits, knowing that work and benefits go together, and that you can connect with this awesome team of experts in your state to get more information and to help folks get more accurate information so that they can make the decision to work at their full potential, whatever that looks like, and how that works with benefits, right? And that SSA doesn't have to be scary and terrifying. That communication with them really does help, and making sure that they also keep their own records, right? Jolene and her team provided some awesome and helpful tips. Make sure that you capture those and help folks keep those at the front of their mind. So that wraps up our series. If you go to the next slide, you will just see my references. So I also have technical assistance, right? So I want to point out the folks that help me make sure that I have accurate information are Molly and Beth, who I work with at VCU National Training and Data Center, which is where I have to keep up my CEUs, the SSA Red Book, which you can go to print it off, you can have them mailed to you, and then the program operations manual. So again, making sure that we're really providing folks with accurate information is so important. So if you don't feel confident, that's okay. You know where to go and get accurate information and where to point folks. So again, thank you so much for participating in this series. We have about 10 minutes for questions, and we have Jolene and Margot here, who again are really your experts because they're doing the benefits planning day in and day out with, as you heard, the entire state, right, of Utah. So they have a lot on their plate as well. So thank you again. And a huge thanks to Jolene and her team for participating and helping present on today's webinar. Danny, I am not sure how you take the quiz. Tricia, could you help provide some guidance there?
Sure. So I believe for this this series that you guys are participating in live, you received a pre-test, and then you'll take the same post-test to demonstrate the knowledge that you gained. On the TA Center website, not sure if I'm smart enough to figure out how to share my screen other than what's in the webinar piece. So I'm not going to mess with it because I'm still learning how to use Adobe and facilitate it well. On the TA Center website, we have uploaded the 3 of the series. We're still working on the 4th one. It takes a little bit to convert it to be able to upload to the website and have the quiz embedded into each training event. And so we're working on the 4th and the 5th, but the whole series will be on the TA Center website. And as you go through and watch it, it will then prompt up the quiz. You'll answer those questions, and then you can print a certificate to verify the amount of time that you spent on that webinar. So for you folks, what we'll do is we'll send out a certificate it'll just be generic, that says 5 hours of benefits planning series, so that you can have that for your own training records if you need those for your agency, or those continuing ed credits that VR and DSPD or other kind of funders look for professionals getting continuing education. So we'll send out the certificates to you for those of you that have completed all 5 of the series, but we did record them and put them on the TA Center website so that you can refer others to the website and get that information, and then they can have verification they've taken the information. So as a TA Center, we're just trying to have more of the information that we're sharing with folks available for those who are interested in the future. So hopefully that's clarified that. I can put up the website again. That goes specifically to the where the webinars are archived. Any other questions from those of you that viewed the recorded version, since we had technical difficulties last time that you weren't able to answer, that you want to take the time to get answered now?
Yes, a huge thank you to everyone who has put up with my absolutely poor internet connection throughout the series. Major appreciation for your flexibility and rolling with the recording last week.
Looks like we have a couple folks that are getting ready to type some questions.
Dawn, our pleasure. Thank you for joining. Awesome, Trista. Glad it's been helpful.
Okay, I don't see anybody else typing in the chat box other than the comments, so we can probably go ahead and wrap it up. Thank you, Jolene and Margot and Ashley for facilitating and making sure we're sharing accurate information, and thank you, captioners. Makes it so that anybody can access this information in the future. So again, thanks so much. And we'll get out the post quiz. Kelly Hess will be sending that out to folks. Okay, we should be able to try to put all those together in that final email and send it out. It'll take me a minute to get them all together from all 5 webinars, but I will do my best. Okay? Thank you.